The sand stretched forever in every direction, red and orange and brown, like a wound across the surface of Cathra 7. The twin suns beat down without mercy, and the air shimmered with heat that would kill most beings in hours. This was the Ashen Waste, the largest desert on a planet covered in deserts. And it was here that Specialist Marcus Webb had been stranded for 11 days. He moved slowly across the dunes, his feet wrapped in layers of torn fabric from his emergency kit. His water had run out 2 days ago. His ration bars were gone. The beacon on his crashed scout ship had stopped working on day 3, and he had no way to know if anyone was even looking for him. But Marcus kept walking. The Velthrani observers watched from their hidden outpost, nestled in a canyon 30 kilometers away. They had been monitoring the human since his small vessel had fallen from the sky, struck by an unexpected electromagnetic storm. Protocol demanded they stay hidden. This region of space was still under dispute, and revealing themselves to an Earth scout could create diplomatic problems. "He should be dead by now," Commander Thrall said, her 4 eyes fixed on the holographic display. The human was just a small dot moving across vast emptiness. "The Ashen Waste kills our own people in 3 days without proper supplies. He has nothing, yet he moves," said Science Officer Yen. His scales were pale blue, a sign of his discomfort with the heat even inside their climate-controlled station. "How does he move?" They had watched the human do impossible things. On day 5, he had found water by digging in a dry riverbed, somehow knowing exactly where to look. On day 7, he had captured one of the razor-tailed sand creatures that killed Velthrani hunters, cooking it over a fire made from dried plant matter. On day 9, during a sandstorm that should have buried him alive, he had wrapped himself in his emergency blanket and wedged himself between 2 rocks, emerging hours later covered in red dust but still breathing. Their species evolved on a death world. Yen reminded the commander. "We have studied this. Their planet has extreme temperature variations, toxic atmospheres in some regions, predators on every continent, and geological instability. They are adapted for survival." "Adapted is one thing," Thrall replied. "This is something else." Marcus had stopped moving. Through their long-range sensors, they watched him kneel in the sand and begin digging again. He had found something, a type of succulent plant that grew beneath the surface. He ate it raw, grimacing at the bitter taste but forcing himself to swallow. "He learns from the environment," Yen said with wonder. "He has no training for this specific world, no knowledge of our plants or creatures, yet he survives. How?" The answer was something the Velthrani could not fully understand because they had never needed to. Their civilization had developed on a gentle world with mild weather and abundant resources. They had never faced the brutal selection pressures that had shaped humanity across millions of years of evolution. Marcus did not know why he could keep going when every cell in his body screamed for rest. He only knew that he could not stop. Somewhere out there, beyond the endless dunes, there was a settlement. He had seen it on his scans before the crash, a small mining outpost about 200 kilometers from his current position. 200 kilometers through the hottest, driest, most hostile terrain on the planet. For Marcus, that was just a very long walk. He thought about his grandmother as he walked. She had been a marathon runner in her youth, completing races across deserts on Earth for fun. When he was a child, she had told him stories about the Badwater Ultramarathon, a race through Death Valley in summer heat that made this desert seem almost pleasant by comparison. "The body wants to quit before the mind does," she had said. "Your muscles will scream. Your lungs will burn. Every part of you will beg to stop. But the body can take more than you think. Much more. The limit is in your head, Marcus. Always in your head." He had not understood then. He understood now. On day 12, the Velthrani observers made contact with their high command. The situation had become too unusual to ignore. Commander Thrall transmitted a full report, including sensor recordings of the human's journey. The response came within hours. Continue observation. Do not interfere. This was now a matter of scientific interest to the entire Velthrani collective. They want to see how far he can go, Yen said, reading the orders. They want to see if he can actually make it, Thrall corrected. If a human can cross the Ashen waste on foot, without supplies, without support, that changes everything we know about their species. On the 13th day, Marcus reached the mountains. They rose from the desert like broken teeth, black rock thrust up from the red sand. The mining outpost was on the other side, according to his memory of the scans. He would have to climb. His body was a ruin. He had lost weight, his skin was cracked and bleeding, and his muscles trembled with every step. But his eyes were clear, and his mind was focused on one simple thought: keep moving forward. The Velthrani watched him begin the ascent. The slopes were steep and treacherous, covered in loose stone that shifted under his weight. Several times he slipped and slid back down, losing precious progress. Each time, he got up and started again. His heart rate is dangerously high, Yen reported. Body temperature elevated. He is pushing himself beyond safe biological limits. And yet he climbs, Thrall said quietly. They had stopped taking bets on when he would die. They had stopped expecting him to die at all. What they were witnessing now felt less like a struggle for survival and more like something else entirely, a demonstration of what a human could do when all other options were gone. Marcus did not know he was being watched. He only knew that the top of the ridge was getting closer, one handhold at a time. His fingers were raw and bloody, leaving red smears on the black rock. His legs had stopped hurting hours ago, which he knew was a bad sign, but he could not afford to think about that. Just before sunset on the 13th day, he pulled himself over the final ledge and looked down at the valley beyond. The mining outpost was there, exactly where he remembered. Lights were already coming on as the suns began to set. He could see vehicles moving between buildings and the glint of metal structures. He had made it. Marcus allowed himself to sit for a moment, looking at the distant settlement with tears streaming down his ruined face. Then he started down the other side of the mountain, because the job was not finished yet. The Velthrani command ship arrived in orbit around Cathara 7 on the 15th day, carrying High Admiral Sarth herself. She had made the journey specifically to witness what was happening on the planet below. The reports from Commander Thrall's outpost had spread through the entire collective, passed from officer to officer with growing amazement. A human had crossed the Ashen waste alone. "Show me the full recording," Sarth ordered as she entered the observation chamber. She was old for a Velthrani. Her scales faded to pale gray, but her four eyes were sharp and keen. They played the entire journey for her, compressed into hours of footage. She watched the human dig for water. She watched him hunt and cook the sand creature. She watched him survive the storm, climb the mountains, and finally stumble into the mining outpost on the 14th day, collapsing just inside the main gate. When the recording ended, Sarah sat in silence for a long time. "Our treaty negotiations with Earth have been stalled for 3 cycles, she finally said. "We believed we were dealing from a position of strength. We believed their technology was inferior, their territory limited, their military capabilities underwhelming. We believed we could dictate terms." "Admiral?" Commander Thrall was uncertain where this was going. "I have just watched a creature from a gravity well higher than ours, with primitive survival equipment, cross a wasteland that kills our own trained soldiers. He had no water, no food, no shelter. He had nothing but his own body and his own will. And he survived." Sarah stood and walked to the viewing window, looking down at the desert planet below. "What would 10,000 of them do? What would 1,000,000? If they can do this alone and unprepared, what can they do with resources and motivation? We have been fools, Thrall. We have been measuring the wrong things." Marcus woke in a medical facility, surrounded by unfamiliar equipment and alien faces. The Velthrani medical team had been called in when the mining outpost reported finding a nearly dead human at their gates. For days, they'd worked to stabilize him, replacing fluids and treating the extensive damage to his body. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was Commander Throw, standing at the foot of his bed. "You survived," she said in accented but understandable English. "We watched your entire journey. We did not believe it was possible." Marcus blinked slowly, his mind struggling to process this information. "You watched?" "From the beginning. Protocol demanded we not interfere. But what you did, it changes things. The Ashen Waste has never been crossed on foot. Not by us, not by any species we have encountered. You are the first." He did not know what to say to that. He had just been trying to survive, trying to get home, trying to keep his grandmother's voice in his head, telling him the limit was always in his mind. Over the following weeks, as Marcus recovered, the political situation shifted. High Admiral Sarth contacted Earth's diplomatic corps directly, requesting a new round of treaty negotiations. When asked why the sudden change, she gave an answer that would be repeated throughout the galaxy for cycles to come. "We watched one of your people refuse to die," she said. "We counted the ways he should have failed, and he failed none of them. You have shown us something important about your species. We would prefer to be your allies than your enemies." The treaty was signed within 3 months. It was fair and balanced, treating both species as equals. The Velthrani gave up their territorial claims in the disputed sector, and in return, Earth shared agricultural techniques that helped struggling Velthrani colonies survive. Marcus became something of a celebrity, though he never understood why. To him, he had just done what any human would do. He had kept walking when walking was the only option. He had refused to quit because quitting meant dying. Years later, a monument was erected at the edge of the Ashen Waste. It showed a human figure, head bowed against an invisible wind, taking one more step forward. The plaque at its base was simple: "For the scout who would not fall." Pilgrims came from across Velthrani space to see it. They stood before the statue and tried to understand what it represented. This stubborn refusal to accept defeat. This determination that burned hotter than their twin suns. Some of them understood. Most did not. But all of them remembered the lesson. In the great darkness between stars, where countless species struggled and schemed and fought for dominance, humanity had found its place not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers. They had found it through something simpler and far more terrifying. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to endure. And the galaxy had taken notice.